this couple, they're so wonderful. They're Southern love. And when she visits for a while, she'll go about 3 days. She'll say, I got to get home to my mountains. Got to get home to my mountains. She lives up in Hendersonville, North Carolina. Up in the mountains there by Asheville, North Carolina. She's got lots of waterfalls. She's got a wonderful husband. Great shopping. But she and Eric together have made quite a spiritual impact, I believe, in the state of North Carolina and in the area they live in. Jesus has touched them tremendously, but they took up the cross for what the Lord put on their heart. And I'd love for Deb Orders from Hendersonville, North Carolina, to come on up here. Miss Deb.
Hi, guys. I'm blessed to be here. It's awesome to see all your wonderful, beautiful, and handsome faces. So I'm going to share what God's been doing in our area. But before I share, I want to pray. So Father God, I thank you for this day. I thank you for blessing everyone here and everyone on the live stream, God. I thank you that your heart is my heart, that your words are my words, and that people get blessed by what you're doing, God, that they see what you're doing and how faithful and loving you are, in the name of Jesus. Sometimes, if I can get my phone to stand up here so I can actually see my notes and maybe not get too far off track. And it's not going to. Sometimes I think we have to go back and see what God's done, how he's pursued us, how he's prepared us, the things that he's done to get us where we are so that he can work in us, so that he can have us partner with him and do the things that he wants us to do. So I'm going to go back a little bit before I tell you what he's doing now. All my life, I went to church. I was taken to church. I was in the Methodist church. I knew who God and Jesus were. I went to Billy Graham crusades. I went to Oral Roberts crusades. I went to the altar more times than I can count or even remember. People ask me, when did you get saved? I have no idea. None. And one of the million times I went to the altar, I guess, but I don't know. But I know I did. And I knew who God and Jesus were, but I did not have a relationship with them. I only knew who they were. I did not have a relationship. I did not know their power. I didn't know their love. I didn't know the longing they had for a relationship with me. I didn't know them intimately. And all that changed in 2013 when my parents both became sick at the same time. Is falling. And I became their caregiver for 5 years. My mom was on dialysis. My dad was sick and in the hospital with double necrotizing pneumonia. He was very, very sick. We almost lost him numerous times. He was in ICU for weeks and weeks, out, back in ICU, through blood clots to his lungs. It was horrendous. And then he had lung cancer 2 years later. The pain of watching them both dying was horrible. My dad died in 2016. Mom quit dialysis and died in 2017, a year and 9 days later after Dad. All during this time, I was praying more than I'd ever prayed. I was talking to God. I was talking to Jesus like never before. I was seeking them. But what I didn't know is I was seeking them. They were pursuing me. And I mean pursuing me so that I knew they were pursuing me. I'll tell you a couple examples. My dad, one time when we took him for a PET scan to see where else the cancer had come up, I'm standing there, the nurse takes him back, I leave. I go to the gift store and I buy this little thing. I go, I don't know how I'm buying this for, but I'm buying it for somebody. I go back. She's standing there waiting on me. And she said, I've been looking for you. And I went, what? And she said, when I took your dad back to the x-ray machine, Jesus tapped me on the shoulder. And he said, when you lay my son down, you go back and see about my daughter. And she took me to the office and she let me cry on her shoulder. And she went and got me some elaborate meal and fed me in her office. And she said, when your dad gets out, we're going to set him in the hall and we're going to feed him too. Things like that just kept happening over and over. I mean, there was no doubt he was pursuing me. He was showing me he was there. He was showing me that he saw me, because he is the God who sees us, right? He sees everything. Another example was a couple I'd met one time who lived an hour and a half away from me. Dad's back in ICU. I'm standing at the third-story window, not thinking very good thoughts. And at that moment, my phone rang. And they said, can we come take you to dinner, to lunch? And I went, you live an hour and a half away. And they said, yeah, can we come? And I went, sure. They come and take me. And I go, you don't know what it meant when you called at that moment and took me to lunch. And she says, no, you don't know what it meant. I was looking at my computer screen and God flashed across my screen, go call Deborah Orders and take her to lunch. They pursued me. Then they started honoring prayers that I knew that they were honoring. Dad had nodules pop up all over his body, and it was torturing him. And he would say, I've got another one today. And I prayed. I said, God, I want my dad to live. But if he's not going to live, if this cancer is not going to go away, no more visual knots, no more nodules, nowhere on his body popping out. God, honor my prayer. And not another one for the next 10 months that he lived ever popped out. Ever. They may have been somewhere else inside, but they never were visual to us again. I knew it was God. So, I just messed up my whole thing. Okay, I knew it was God. And when they died, my dad and I were very, very close. Mom and I had our issues. Dad and I were very close, but I loved them both. I was broken, literally broken. I was sick. I was broken. My hair was falling out. I had diabetes with an A1C of 15, a blood sugar of 550. The doctor looked at me and said, you are dying. And I began seeking God even more. I began seeking Jesus even more. And as I did that, it just got more and more intense. And he just showed up more. I was in a church praising after this, still sick, still broken. I'm praising. And across the room, Jesus shows up. And he looks at me and he says, I'm going to come and heal your broken heart. And he walked over to me, engulfed me in his love, and healed my heart. And then he danced with me through 2 dances. I never wanted to open my eyes again. He swirled me and threw his head back and laughed and twirled me, and he was glowing. It created a desire in me, a burning desire that nothing could quench. Nothing but going to him. Nothing but pursuing him back. Nothing but seeking him. So I began really starting to worship and praise. Didn't know a lot about it. Had a friend come to my house, a really good friend, that looked at me and said, God told her to tell me about the presence. And she said, do you know about the presence? And I went, what is that? I didn't know. I didn't know anything when I look back on it that I know now, that I'm so thankful that I know. And the thing is, he will do this for any one of us. He so loves us. He so wants a relationship with us. He so is in pursuit of us. He so wants that more than we want it. But if we can get to the point where we want it, where we love him with our whole heart, soul, and being, he seeks us and pursues us even more. It just never, it doesn't stop. So this created this burning desire to be more intimate, to realize and see what the presence was. And then I started this puzzle piece journey. I read a book called Azusa Street and Beyond by Tommy Walchel. I cried through the first 7 chapters. I read it, and then I turned around and read it again. And all I could do is pray and ask God for revival. I was like, God, do that again. Rend the heavens and come down and do that again, God. Do it again. Fill the earth with your glory. Bring us to our knees as a nation, as a world, and rend the heavens and come do this again. And the desire got more. The burning passion was more. I sought more. And I started asking Jesus and God, give me something to do for you. I want to do something. Give me something to do. This was in 2017, up till 2021, not 2020. COVID hit. I was reading the Azusa Street book for the second time. Then there was a word, and then there was an article, and then there was this and that, and all these puzzle pieces, and I was like, I don't know what any of these mean. But I knew they were somehow connected. I just didn't know how yet. So this was like in March, April, when COVID was bad. In June, at 2 a.m., he woke me up. I knew he woke me up. I knew it was him. And my first words were, yes, God. And he started downloading something to me. And I was like, let me get somewhere I can write this down. And I run to the next room. I get my computer out. He's telling me so fast, and I'm going, slow down, God. I can't type this fast. And he gave me this download of what he wanted me to do. Now, you've got to understand, I'm not a musical person. I can read piano music. I can barely play it. I've had 5 years. 3 when I was a kid that I only remember playing then. I'm not a worship leader. I'm not any of the things he was asking me to do. But he gave me this download, and he said, I want you to take the worship, I want you to take worship out of the 4 walls of the church, and I want you to take it to the streets. And I went, what? He said, and I want you to start with the black community. I went, why? And he said, because I'm honoring them. Start with them. And I'm like, okay. And then he says, I want you to do this, and I want you to do that. And he gives me this long list. And we got to the end, and I went, okay. But God, I don't know how to do any of this. I don't even know what it means to get worship bands and go out and worship in the streets. I don't even know what it means. So he told me. And he told me the first person to go see, a pastor. And I went to see him, and he didn't want any part of anything I was doing with this. But he knew a black preacher in Asheville that he sent me, that I asked him who, and he sent me to him. I go see this guy, and he's crying. I'm crying. He said, everything you're saying, God has been telling me. I'm confirming to you what God has been telling you, and you're confirming to me what God has been telling me. Yes, we've been doing this in Asheville, worshiping in the streets. Yes, we will join with you. So I go to his in July. I go to his worship in Asheville. And the 1st of August, end of July, 1st of August, he comes to us, and he's my first worship group. And they worship. And people are on their knees. We go to the old courthouse in downtown Hendersonville. And that's the other thing, the venues. I asked the visitor center. They said, no, go to the courthouse. Went to the courthouse, and they said, fill out this paperwork. I filled it out. A couple days later, they said, yeah, you got the venue. God went before us and opened every single door. And not only did he open every door, but he opened it without fees. Some of these places had exorbitant fees. One was $174 for every 2 hours. We were there for 2 days. He waived every fee. He worked in their hearts to waive every fee. So we worshiped that first time. And the very first time we worshiped, it was a sunny day, no clouds in the sky except the white fluffy ones. And above the courthouse, where it says, "In God we trust," and the justice scales are on top of the courthouse, there were rainbow clouds. Clouds just filled with rainbows. It was awesome. So, it was great. It was a great worship the first time. Like I said, people were on their knees, on their faces, on the concrete, praying and crying. We had 2 children that first time, a 10-year-old and a 14-year-old, that were crying the whole time. And I finally, after about 2 hours, went over to them and said, "Can I do something for you?" And the 14-year-old girl said, "I didn't know I needed this in my life." And the 10-year-old boy said, "Me either." And they lived in Charlotte, which was 2 hours away from Hendersonville. And their parents said, "They're asking us to please move here." I mean, but see, all I had to do was find the venues, find the bands. I didn't have to go out and find the people. They found us. God sent to every venue we've ever had the people that He wanted there that day. Every time. He sent who He wanted. It didn't matter if it was 1 or 2 people, or it was, we never had hundreds, but if it was 10, 15, it didn't matter. He sent who He wanted there. So we had the first worships that session. Then we had another venue. Then we had another. Then we went to Brevard. Then we went to Flat Rock. When we went to Flat Rock, they kind of gave us a hard time and said, "Well, you can't have amplification." And then they agreed. So this park surrounds, a neighborhood surrounds it. So on Saturday, he came to us. We did it Friday night, and then we did it all day Saturday. Saturday night, he comes and says, "The neighbors are calling me and complaining. They're all complaining. No more amplification. You're done. You're done. Tomorrow when you come, there will be no amplification." Some people prayed for him. I didn't. I wasn't there yet. But some of the worship teams prayed for him. The next day he came back in, same body, different person. And he said, "You can have amplification." God went before us every venue. When we went to Brevard, I called the lady in charge of setting up venues, and I said, "We want to do a worship praise free for the community in downtown Brevard at the Veterans Museum." And she said, no way, no way. This was like in September. She said, "No way, not because of COVID. I said, "We're going to be outside. It doesn't matter." "No, absolutely not." Emphatic. I'm like, okay. So I get off the phone. The next day she texts me the next morning and she says, "The sheriff wants you to call him personally on his personal telephone. Here it is." I called him. He said, "I want to meet with you." I go meet with the sheriff of Brevard. He said, "I want this. Find a place. I'll approve it." And we were in Brevard. It was amazing just to watch how God worked. And guys, I'm not somebody special that God picked out. I'm just Deborah. I just said yes. And if you just say yes to Him, He will open doors. He will open windows. He will knock down walls. He will open doors that no man or demon can close. He will close doors that no man and demon can open. And He will be faithful at doing that. And you don't have to strive. You can rest in it because He does it. We don't have to do it. He will do it. So it got bigger. We ended up with like 17 bands. Then God started weeding them out. And I'm devastated. I'm like, no, we've got so many bands. Now what are we going to do? God weeded them out. Then we got churches calling us and asking us to participate. And they said, "We want to bring our tents and set up our tents with our names and everything." I went, no, sorry. You're welcome to participate. That's not what this is. It is not a venue to get more people in your church. It is a pure worship, and you're welcome to participate. They walked away and never came back. But again, God was weeding them out. I didn't have to. So one day I was really upset because so many bands had weeded out. We were down to 3 or 4 bands. I'm like, I can't even do a whole weekend venue anymore. So I'm talking to one of the worship leaders, and she said, "Deborah, God's weeding these bands out." And I went, I know. And as we're talking, she says, you know, you ought to go check out a place called Echo Mountain Inn. It's near you. And I went, really? She said, yes, it was a healing place for 15 years. People came there, evangelists, pastors, preachers. People came there for healing and to pray. It's an anointed place. And I went, okay. So I hung up and I went, well, I'll go up there sometime. And God said, why don't you go right now? And I went, okay. So I go up and I talked to the owner and I said, we have some worship teams that want to come here and worship. And she says, you're not going to believe this, but 2 days ago, we just wrote on our calendar that we want to start having worship here. And you talk about God going before you. Oh my gosh. He'd already set it up before I ever walked in the door. So we start doing that. Winter comes, we can't worship outside, even though my teams tried with hands red as they could be. And I'd say, stop, just stop. And they go, no, not till the Holy Spirit says. And they would not stop. And they would play in the freezing cold. So in November, after a couple of these episodes, we decided that we needed to go inside. So we started, and I'll finish about Echo in a minute. I get off on a rabbit trail, sorry. And we started inside. So I started going to the store owners, and I started saying, can we come inside and worship? And do worship and praise music. And it's free. It won't cost you anything. And they said, it won't cost us nothing. And we went, nope, nothing. And we started going indoors to some of the store owners and worshiping and praising inside as people shopped. And we did that all winter. Then it started getting warm again, and we were back. But also during the winter, and still, we went to this place called Echo Mountain Inn. And this couple had 4 or 5 children they had adopted from all of different countries. They were great people. And we started worshiping there, and it went really well. And then we worshiped there more. Now it's once or twice a month we worship there, and we do outdoors. We're doing both because we don't want to leave them, because they have been so good to us and such an inspiration. They love us so much and love our praise and worship. So we go both. But we started noticing that everybody was coming to Echo Mountain Inn, and it's on the streets they did too, but they were bringing their kids. And these kids, some of them, a couple of them got up and was singing. And they had these voices. And one of the worship leaders said, you know, we need to train these children. We need to train them how to flow in the Holy Spirit when they worship. Because some of the bands God weeded out were great performers. I mean, some of the greatest performers you've ever seen. But that's not what he was looking for. He doesn't care how good they are. He doesn't care if they can perform. It's not about that. It's not about them. And so he had weeded out those bands. So these kids, you know, they were just kids. But so they started having meetings and meeting up there and teaching these kids how to worship and flow in the Spirit. It was awesome. I would go and listen to these kids and just cry because they were getting it. And they got it pretty fast. A lot faster sometimes than us adults do. They understood. So that's been going on for a little while now. And this weekend, usually I do not go out of town when my bands are worshiping because I'm there, my name's on everything, I've signed the papers. I want to be there and be the responsible one if something happens, or if we've had some opposition. Not a lot, but we've had some. But I want to be the one they come to because I don't want them going to my bands. It's not right. They're giving of their freely of their time and their voices and their instruments. But this weekend, for the first time, one of my main bands that I use is going to be worshiping by themselves without me there. And they're bringing the kids. And these kids are going to worship in the street. There's 11 of them. And they've got drums, and they're playing keyboards, and they're singing, and they're going to worship. I can't even imagine what God's going to do with that. I can't even imagine. So that's this weekend. That's tomorrow. And then one more thing, and I'll quit, Tanya. Oh, pictures. Okay, so the first one, Casey, is of the courthouse where we went, our first worship stuff started. Yes. And this is the band that we started with that I went to Asheville to get. They rocked it. Oh, man, they were awesome. People literally were on their faces on the concrete. They rocked it. They were so good. And then the next one We had children that we invited one time, and this lady taught them how to praise with flags. And she not only taught them that, but she taught them what each color meant and what it represented in Christ and God, the colors. It was really awesome. So these kids just worshiped with flags the whole time the band sang. It was so cool. And then the last picture is of my husband praising, my favorite picture, while our bands are playing. So one more thing, and this is God's timing. He knew I was sharing today. I woke up at 12 o'clock to go to the restroom, went back to bed. I'm laying there thinking, what all am I going to say tomorrow? I've got so much I could say. And I forgot one thing. I got to tell you this first. Okay, we got to go backwards. God started making God connections with groups of people. It was this band, and then this band, and this band used somebody else. And we are now going to 5 home church places, 5. And the people that are there are spirit-filled. And it's like the fivefold ministry. There's prophets, there's evangelists, there's pastors. It's fivefold. And it is so spirit-filled. And it's so powerful. And people are getting healed, and people are getting saved. And we just had a lady get healed the second time of stage 4 brain cancer. Second time. It's just amazing, the connections he made. And what we had a psychic come in town, a world-renowned psychic, 3 generations, been practicing since he was 5. We didn't know he was going to be there that weekend, but we were 3 doors up from him. He's there. He's charging $48 a ticket. All week long, we had met as a group. These church groups we were with. Everybody had come out, taken their time, met at all the corners of Henderson County, and we had prayed over all of Henderson County and surrounded it. We had pulled up prophetic stakes that the enemy had planted, and we had declared and decreed and stood on this, that he would not hear from his demonic sources. So he's playing 2 doors down from us. We're praising 3 doors up from him. Another group comes and we see them, and we don't know where they went, but we know them. And they went down somewhere else to play, away from us, so we wouldn't collide with each other. And one of the girls goes to the car to get her coat, and she walks by the psychic's place, and she goes, "Oh my gosh!" She said, "He's in the middle. We're 3 doors down, they're 2 doors down on the other side of him." And God said to her, "I strategically did that. I planted both teams there with him in the middle. I did that." Like he was so proud of himself. So anyway, last night, but all kinds of, I could go on, I could do this for an hour. So I asked Tanya, how long do I have? So I know. So last night, I wake up, I'm laying there thinking about what I'm going to teach, and he starts talking, and I'm like, what? And he said, next time you worship on the streets, you're going to have the band in the middle. On the side, you're going to have food, and you're going to feed Hendersonville. You're going to get people to donate. Y'all are going to pay into it. You're going to feed Hendersonville. You're going to feed everybody. On the other side, you're going to lay down blankets, and it's going to be my altar. And you're going to invite people to come, and you're going to pray for them, for healing, for salvation, for deliverance, for breaking chains. And you're going to feed them body, soul, and spirit. This is just something I heard last night. I'm like, oh, I didn't go to sleep the rest of the night. I've been up since midnight. I'm like, okay. I said, God, you always wake me up and tell me these things at 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and you know I can't go back to sleep. But that's okay. Keep doing it. So I called some of the leadership there and told them about it this morning. But when we get home, we're going to have meetings and plan the logistics of this. So y'all can be praying for that, because I think it's going to be amazing.